What is the AIDA model? The AIDA model describes a linear purchasing process. The 4 stages it proposes are awareness, interest, desire, and finally action. The model originated in the American advertising industry in the early 20th century, so it's got a lot of history behind it. Let's look at those stages in more detail. In the awareness stage of the AIDA model, the potential purchaser first notices the product, the company, or maybe even the category. Because the model originated in the advertising industry, awareness is usually assumed to come about through advertising. But even in the late 20th century, we realized there were more ways to develop awareness than advertising. There's PR, word of mouth, CSR, corporate social responsibility, sponsorship. These are all examples of well-established ways of building awareness that don't quite fit into the advertising sphere. And obviously, since the development of social media and influencer marketing, the opportunities for building awareness have exploded completely. The second stage is interest. The interest phase is where the purchaser starts to investigate how the product would benefit them. They start thinking about how their life would be different with the product. They want to know more detail about it. Now, this is a challenging stage for marketers because what the customer needs are details, and so we tend to respond with specifications. It makes it the easiest stage of the model to misread. Interested purchasers want details so they can understand the benefits, but with specifications and features, what we're giving them quite often are details and we miss the benefits. It's a mistake as old as the hills. The next stage is desire, and this is where the purchaser starts to develop an intention to buy. They recognize that they want the product. They've already imagined their life with the product and they see that life as a step forward. But there are still plenty of things that would prevent them making a purchase. Just because they have the desire to buy doesn't mean they're going to. The marketer's job is to build the desire in the purchaser. And to me, it's a challenging phase, not because the work is especially difficult, but because it's really just an extension of the interest phase. The types of work you do in the desire phase are very similar to the types of work you do in the interest phase. And so the final step is the action phase. This culminates in a transaction, but it's not just about that transaction. In this phase, the purchaser compares the offerings in their shortlist. They review prices, they contrast the different ways products can be purchased or financed, they investigate terms and conditions, they analyze reviews, they check on after-sales service. When they're satisfied with their investigations, they make a transaction. But this might not be a purchase. It might, for example, be signing up for a trial. Ultimately, the action marketers want to prompt is a financial purchase, and all our activities in the action phase have to be directed towards making sure a financial purchase happens and making that purchase as easy as possible. So if that's the model, what's wrong with it? Well, first of all, purchases aren't linear in the way AIDA suggests. The model's value is that it shows that purchases are made up of different parts, and as marketers we have to satisfy the questions purchasers might raise. The more questions we answer, the better we answer them, the easier we make that process, the more likely the purchaser is to buy from us as opposed to one of our competitors. But AIDA suggests that the purchase is a linear process, and it's not. Some purchasers, for example, will go through every stage of the AIDA process in a single online session, especially if the purchase value is quite small. It would be impractical to apply AIDA to buying staples on Amazon, for example. Other purchasers might jump straight from the awareness stage to parts of the action stage, and I put myself in that camp. As soon as I become aware of some products, I find out how much they cost to see if it's worth investing any time. Rather than being a funnel, it's best to see the stages of the AIDA model as components in a purchase. See them as independent parts of that process. It is safe to assume most purchasers will go through each component, but it's not safe to assume the sequence they'll take. The other limitation of AIDA is that it fails to acknowledge the importance of post-sales activities. We probably don't need to remind ourselves that post-sales marketing boosts our chances of both repeat sales and positive reviews. This is a whole world that AIDA doesn't even acknowledge exists. So, where does AIDA fit into your marketing strategy? The problem with models is that they tend to sit in isolation. You read about them, you think, that sounds so logical, so useful and so relevant, but then you struggle to incorporate them into your day-to-day activities. AIDA fits nicely into the communications stage of your lead generation strategy. By this point, you've worked out who your target audience is, what their goals and problems are, and what value propositions you have to address those goals and problems. In communications, you're working out how to get your value propositions to your target market. AIDA's role in this stage of the strategy is to make sure that you address every part of the purchase process. So, does your communications plan include a way to make people notice your product or service? Are you producing materials, videos or social content to get people curious about your product or service? Is it enticing enough to turn that interest into desire? And if purchasers decide they want your product or service on their shortlist, do you make it easy for them to turn a desire to purchase into an actual purchase? It's easy to address AIDA's two main limitations: to develop a model that properly describes a purchase process and helps marketers satisfy purchaser requirements. The technique is buyer personas. You're bound to have heard of them because they're oh so fashionable. But, like most marketing fads, they come with an enormous amount of bullshit. So, in the next piece, I'm going to introduce you to Browser Bill, Interested Iris, Purchasing Paula, and Loyal Luke. These are the personas that'll help you help your customers. Thanks for watching.